Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American Sanyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith WASH Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American Sanyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her Guru, His Holiness, Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Bhagawati Saraswati. I'm speaking to you from the lap of the Himalayas in a place in India called Rishikesh. We are in the north of India, just in the lap of the Himalayas, on the banks of the flowing, rushing waters of Mother Ganga. Just as she comes out of the mountains and begins her journey all the way out to Ganga Sagar, where she meets the ocean. During our time together each week, I'll be bringing to you so many different aspects of the grace that flows here every minute and every moment and every day and every hour in this incredibly blessed and divine and sacred place. I will bring beautiful chanting, the Ganga Arati ceremony that we do every evening, our lighting ceremony, as well as teachings and even interviews with so many of the people who are here, and hopefully also with my incredible Guru, Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji. It's such a joy and such an honor and such a blessing to be able to share with you every Thursday on this OMTimes radio show. This, as you all know, is our first week. And so I'm very, very excited to be here with you all. I wanted just quickly to mention on a logistic note that one of the aspects of being here in India, and particularly in Rishikesh where I am, is that our electricity source is not 100% constant. And what that means is that it is possible that we could get disconnected during the talk because either the internet or the electricity through which the internet runs gets disconnected. Don't worry, I will come back. It usually just takes about 30 to 60 or 90 seconds for it to kick back in. So if we do lose the connection, just take that time as a way to connect within. Close your eyes if it's safe to do so where you are. And just connect to your breath and bring your awareness to what it might be like if you were sitting here on the banks of the flowing and rushing waters of Mother Ganga. I'm going to use this wonderful gift of the weekly radio show to share with you so many of the different beautiful lessons that I have been blessed enough to learn living here. So much of what I have seen, what I have experienced, what I have been blessed to see as my own opening and awakening and acceptance of the invitation to life has taken place here just through grace. today, as it's the first time, our first time together, it was suggested that I should use this time to introduce myself, to share with you a little bit about my journey and how I got here, because so many people think, oh God, amazing. She left so much and now she's living in India. And yet for me, it's been the exact opposite. I don't feel that I have left anything or given anything up, but rather it's been an experience of being given so much. It's been an experience not of renunciation, even though the vows I've taken, the path I'm on, an official path of sannyas, is a path of renunciation. Nonetheless, the felt sense is an experience of such abundance and having been given so much, so generously by the universe, by the divine, not at all an experience of having renounced or given anything up. And so I wanted just to take this time on our first session together to just share a bit about the miracle that brought me here, because it's a story of grace, and that grace is available, present for everyone. It's not something that was special or unique, or that I did something or just manifested something, but rather I stepped into a flow of grace that is present in its fullest, strongest form for everyone, all the time. I've been living here in Rishikesh for almost the last 20 years. And in retrospect, of course, my ego would love to claim credit. My ego would love to say that I had come searching for a guru, or that I had come searching for deeper meaning to life, or that I had come searching for some higher truth or spiritual awakening. And yet, on a conscious level, that wasn't at all the case. I didn't know at 25, which is how old I was when I came, I didn't know that there was something to search for. I didn't know there was an alternative to the life that I was living. I grew up in California with wonderful, generous parents, loving parents. I had a fantastic education. I went to Stanford and graduated from Stanford. I was then doing my PhD in psychology. So I had all of the things that in the West we are told one needs for success, for happiness, for whatever we want out of life, that equation we are given for fulfillment and for happiness in life. And so I didn't even know that there was an entirely other level of existence, that there was an entirely other plane of existence on which one could live that is infinitely and inexpressibly more full of joy, of bliss, of peace, of experience that's infinitely richer and deeper. I wish I had known to look for it, because maybe I would have started looking before I was 25. But since I didn't know, I didn't look. I was focused on achieving in the academic world, in the professional world, in the social world. And I came to India traveling. I didn't know anything about India, and all I had done was agree to come when India was suggested as the place for travel. And on the airplane, somewhere flying over the South Pacific, somewhere between California and New Delhi, I had a conversation with myself, one of those epiphany moments in which I realized none of this makes any sense. I'm traveling thousands of miles away to a country, a place, a culture that I know nothing about, in which I don't even have that much interest. And I was in the middle of my PhD program. I had so much going on back in California. And yet, I always, even though I wasn't religious, I always had a very, very strong belief in a planner. I couldn't have told you who the planner was, what he, she, it looked like, what the correct name for the planner was. If you had asked me about God, I would have said, I don't know anything about God. I don't even know if God exists. But I do know, I always knew, that there was a capital P planner. And so I always had great, great faith in that planner. And that came to me as I was on the airplane on the way to Delhi. And in a moment, I will share with you about that voice that came to me on the airplane.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
So I was on the airplane, flying from California to Delhi. And I had this moment in which I realized this doesn't make any sense. I'm going somewhere I don't know anything about, that I'm not even that interested in. The only reason that my conscious mind had agreed to go to India was I was a very, very strict vegetarian. And having traveled extensively in Europe, having spent a year in South America, I knew how difficult it was to be a very, very strict vegetarian in places where I didn't speak the language and had so many half funny and half very anxiety-producing experiences in other countries, trying to get pure vegetarian food. So on the airplane, though, I said to myself, this is crazy. You're taking 3 months off of school, a whole semester off of school, to go somewhere that you don't know anything about, that you're not interested in, where the only redeeming value is that you can get vegetarian food. When I could get vegetarian food on my corner, I had worked out a beautiful niche in the San Francisco Bay Area with so many places to get vegetarian food. I cooked vegetarian food. So suddenly I realized how crazy it was. And yet, because I had such a deep belief in this capital P planner, even though I had never actually had any experience of God, I said to myself, okay, what this means is there is a reason that you have to go to India. And the fact that you don't know just means that it's going to become evident to you later on. It will be revealed to you. You just have to keep your heart open. And so I took a pledge to keep my heart open. And my rule was, if I couldn't keep my heart open, I would turn around and get on a plane back to California. And so I made this vow that if I couldn't keep my heart open, if I couldn't go do whatever the calling of my heart when I was there said, that I would come back to California. I could do, even though I couldn't register back into school for that one semester I had taken off, I could still do writing, I could do research, I could get practicum units. There was so much else I could do. That epiphany, that vow I took, ended up being of such importance later on, because when we got to Delhi, I opened up a guidebook, 500-page Lonely Planet guidebook. This was in 1996, so there wasn't an internet yet that you could just go to and say, India, where should we go? And I opened up the guidebook and said, let's go to Rishikesh. Seemed a beautiful place. I was always a nature person. Rishikesh had mountains and the river. I was already a yoga student. Rishikesh was advertised as the yoga capital already 20 years ago. So we said, okay, we'll go to Rishikesh. And by an incredible series of coincidences and serendipities, I ended up in the only hotel at that time. Now there are many. But at that time, there was only one hotel in the area where Parmarth Niketan, the ashram where I've lived for the last 20 years, where that ashram is in the line of all of the large traditional Indian ashrams. There was only one hotel there, otherwise only ashrams. And that was the one hotel, by grace, I had chosen in Delhi that we'll stay at this hotel. It was called the Green Hotel, and being an environmentalist already and having worked for Greenpeace and being vegan and being all of those other green things, something inspired me. Okay, we have to stay at the Green Hotel. So having put down my bags at the hotel, I said, I'm going to put my feet in the river. I was hot. I was tired. The idea of putting my feet in the river, sitting in the lap of the mountains, sounded very refreshing, very beautiful. I had no idea that Ganga was sacred, that Ganga was the mother. I just knew a river. So I went down to the river. And as I stood on Ganga's banks, it was as though a veil that covered not only my eyes, but covered every organ of sensation and perception that I had, every organ of knowledge that I had, that veil was just pulled away in a moment. And I could see. And I burst into tears. Not sad tears, of course, but not even happy tears. They were tears of coming home. Tears of the truth. Tears of really, really seeing. And the vision that I had was a vision of the divine that was full sense. It was not just a visual vision. It was a vision that flooded all of my organs of sensation and perception, my eyes, my ears, my touch, everything. And I sat down and cried and cried and cried. And then I noticed as I turned my head that even though the vision originally had come on the waters of Mother Ganga as I stood and stared at her flowing waters, as I had that divine darshan, even though the vision came first with that, as I moved my head, as the background of my visual field changed, the foreground didn't. And so first I was looking at Ganga, at the river. Then I was looking at the steps, the platform that I had walked down to get to the river. Then I was looking at the pillars, then the people, trees, the street. And it didn't matter what the background was. The foreground stayed constant. The foreground was this all-encompassing image experience of divinity. And so whatever I saw, it was just so beautiful and so divine. And the tears just poured down my eyes, whatever I looked at. And what it did was it stripped away, as that veil was pulled off, it stripped away everything that I thought I knew about myself, about the universe, about my relationship to the universe. Here I was, a straight A student, a Stanford graduate. But I knew nothing. If you had said to me, "Who are you?" I would have told you my name. I would have told you my age. I would have told you where I was from. I might have told you my major. I would have described my relationships. I might have told you about issues that I had. Depression, anxiety, fear. I would have gone into, depending on how close we were, every aspect of what I identified as self. The physical body, the aspects of it I was happy with, the aspects of it I wasn't so happy with, the emotional body. I would have told you about things in my history, what had happened to me that shouldn't have happened, or what should have happened that didn't. All of those aspects that we identify as, that make up our identity, I would have given all of those to you, thinking that that's who I was. And yet, as that veil was pulled away, although I couldn't articulate it, I couldn't make any semantic sense of it at the time, and it was weeks before there were even the beginnings of words to come to the experience that I had had. In that moment, it was all stripped away. And I knew that here I was, at home, back, with the Mother, with the Divine, and that nothing else mattered nearly as much as just being here, as just being able to stay on these divine banks of Mother Ganga forever, and to keep being able to bathe in the experience of the divine. And then I had the opportunity, the grace of meeting my Guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji. And when we come back, I will tell you about how I met him and what happened.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe. The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati back, speaking to you from the holy banks of the Mother Ganga River in the lap of the Himalayas in Rishikesh, India. Sharing here this evening for my first show, the experience of the grace that brought me here. So after having had that experience on the banks of Mother Ganga, I was walking through this ashram, through Parmarth Niketan one day, and I discovered the ashram simply as a pathway to take me from the banks of Ganga, where I was having these ecstatic experiences of oneness and opening and awakening with the divine, with the universe. And the hotel in which we were staying, which was on a street behind all of the ashrams. And I had discovered that Parmarth Niketan was a beautiful and clean pathway to get from the hotel to the banks of the river and back. It was much nicer than the little alleyway that originally the people in the hotel had sent me down. So I was walking through the ashram one day, and I heard a voice. And the voice said, "You must stay here." And since I was a scientist, not a mystic, if there was a voice, it meant someone must have spoken. And so I turned around to see who spoke. There was no one. So I kept walking because, of course, if there were no one, I couldn't have possibly heard a voice. So I pretended I hadn't heard the voice. I ignored it. I must have made it up. And I kept walking. About 30 seconds later, I heard it again. And again, I looked around. And again, there was no one. And again, I was just about to ignore it when my own voice kicked in. And my own voice said, "Sure, you can go ahead and ignore that the second time. You can go ahead and pretend you didn't hear a voice. No problem. But if you do that, you have to walk out of this city, get in a taxi, go back to Delhi, and get on the first flight back to San Francisco, because that was the vow that I had made on the airplane. That since I didn't know why I was coming to India, and yet since I had such faith in what I used to just call the capital P planner, because I didn't have any other name. I didn't have a connection to God in any name or any form. So I used to just believe in what I called the capital P planner. So since I had taken that vow that I would keep my heart open, or if I couldn't keep it open, that I would return to California and at least continue on in my PhD studies, at least getting units that quarter. So I stood there in the midst of the ashram, having just heard a voice. And of course people say, well, was it your voice? It was not my voice in a voice that I recognized. Clearly it had come from within, since there was no one around me who had spoken. It had not come down from the clouds or from the ether. No one else heard it. So, of course, it came from within. And yet, it was not the inner voice to which I was used to. It did not sound like me. It felt and it sounded as though it came from outside, even though my rational mind could look around and realize that since there was no one, there couldn't have been a voice. And since in my experience, up until that point, of not only myself being a scientist, not a mystic, but of never having met anyone who was a mystic or who had heard voices. In my experience, the only people who heard voices were schizophrenics and Joan of Arc. And since I knew I wasn't Joan of Arc, and I certainly hoped I wasn't going schizophrenic, I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard a voice. But my own voice wouldn't let me. And so rather than turn around and go back to Delhi, I accepted, okay, I've just heard a voice. And the voice says, you must stay here. And it had spoken so clearly both times. You must stay here. And so, once I decided I was not going to walk back to get in a taxi to Delhi, I was not going to fly back to San Francisco until the 3 months of our holiday was up, I had no choice but to listen to the voice. And I looked up and I saw a sign that said, office. And I went in. Turned out that Pujya Swamiji, the head of the ashram, was abroad at the time. And at that time, I actually needed his specific permission to stay. Parmarth Niketan is a very, very old and traditional ashram in the Indian lineage. It has been here since 1942, and with 1,000 rooms, it is the largest ashram in all of Rishikesh. It's one of the largest spiritual institutions in all of India, and very traditional. And at that time, you couldn't just walk in off the street as a Western woman and say, I want to stay. So I had to get his permission. Now, in the last 2 decades, it has become truly, by his grace, by Ganga's grace, has become a place that is a sanctuary for people from every walk of life and every corner of the earth and every culture. And of course, in those days, too, it was open. You just had to have special permission. You couldn't just walk in. Now we are full of everyone who just walks in and stays. And so it's changed so significantly over the last 2 decades. But at that time, I needed his permission. And he was out of the country. He returned only a week later. And when I finally was able to meet him, I finally was able to ask him, his presence, the divinity of his presence, was so overpowering and so transformative that every last bit of what I thought I knew, who I thought I was just wiped out. The first time I sat in his presence, it felt like someone just came through my psyche, through my consciousness, through my brain, and wiped clear everything that I thought I had known in order to make room for the truth. In one of our very, very first times sitting together, he held up a pen, and this was the spoken teaching of the experience I had had on the banks of Ganga in the beginning. He held up a pen and he said, "You are not this pen." And I laughed. I knew I wasn't a pen. I was a 25-year-old PhD student. He did not laugh. He looked at me very seriously. And he said, "You laugh because you know that you're not a pen. But you still think that you are that body. You still think that you are that name or that history or that identity or that personality. There will come a time when you laugh in the same way when I tell you you are not this body, or when I tell you you are not this personality, or when I tell you you are not this identity, as you just laughed when I told you you are not a pen." And I stayed. I had an experience on the first day after I met him, when he gave me permission to stay in the ashram. But I was planning not to stay immediately. I was planning to stay only after we had gone to the mountains and come back. But I had an experience in which my feet literally got stuck to the ground and I couldn't move. I couldn't physically walk out of the ashram. And so, by a touch of grace that was stronger than just a gentle touch, I knew that this was where I needed to be. It was here on the banks of Ganga, living, serving, learning under Pujya Swami Chidanand that I was meant to live. When we come back, I will share more of the divine experience.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe, The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go.
Yeah! The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
With you from the sacred banks of the Mother Ganga River in the lap of the Himalayas in Rishikesh, India. And so, as I mentioned just before the break, when my feet literally would not carry me out of the ashram, I realized that right now, not later, not even days later, but right now, right here, this was from when I was supposed to stay. I did eventually finish my PhD. Pujya Swamiji did make me go back for a brief period of time, but that's not the part of the story I want to focus on, because that's just plot. And what I want to focus on is, in this final time we have before the show concludes this week, is a few of the incredible teachings that I have experienced here. And then each week, we will actually take up a different topic each week. Today, it was suggested that I should just introduce myself, get familiar with all of you so that you know where I am, how I got here. And then every week, we'll actually take a different topic. So we'll talk about forgiveness. We'll talk about ego. We'll talk about attachment. We'll talk about how to find balance in our life. We'll talk about the power of thought, mantra. We'll meditate. We'll have chanting. We'll have our sacred Ganga Arati, lighting ceremony. We'll do all of those. But in this short time we have left, I want to just touch quickly on a few of the incredible things that I've learned here. The first is the difference between abundance and lack. And that it has nothing to do with actually what we have. I had come from a world full of people who had so much materially. Full of people whose refrigerators were overflowing. Whose cups literally were overflowing. And yet who lived with an experience of lack, of scarcity. As so many of us do. So many of us move through the world feeling that whether it's just the 2 days left on a sale, 24 hours left to get something, or whether it's love, success, joy, that somehow there's a scarcity of that. There's a lack. And when I came to India, what I discovered was people who had almost nothing. People who lived so far below the Western standards of poverty. And yet, whose felt sense, whose experience of life on earth is one of abundance. Who want to do nothing but share. It was never about hoarding. It was never about how much for me. It's always about how much can we give, how much can we share, how much can we who have nothing feed you who may have everything. And so I was given the gift of seeing from the beginning how rich, how abundant these people are, and to realize that there's a magic in this abundance. I've also realized that the point of life is not about what we become It's not about becoming anything. It's about recognizing who we are. That every ounce of energy, every day, every hour that we spend trying to become something is an hour, a day, an ounce of energy that we are not using, unfolding into what we already are, who we already are. It's never about what we're going to become, and always about who we already are. Whether it's joy we're looking for, whether it's peace, whether it's love, whether it's fulfillment, all of that comes only in the recognition, the awakening to who we are, not in trying to transform ourselves into something else. I have also learned that service is the most natural byproduct, the most natural outcome of a spiritual life. So many of us want to serve. Even before I came to India, I was so focused on service. So whether it was volunteer work, whether it was working for different environmental organizations, whether it was just being a very strict vegan and a proselytizing vegan, to the point where my friends called me a vegetarist instead of just a vegetarian, because it was all about convincing them in order to save the animals. So all of us in our own ways and our own levels are trying to do good things in the world to help others. But for me, that had always come from a place of separateness, a place of being separate from the children who were starving, a place of being separate from the whales or the dolphins who were being caught in the nets of fishermen, being separate from those who were suffering. So my heart went out to them, but it went out from a place of separateness. And from meditation, when we have that experience of oneness, that experience of being one with the universe, we serve. We naturally serve. If your meditation is real and is deep, service is going to be a natural outcome of that. And yet, it doesn't come from a place of separation. It doesn't come from a place of me helping you, or my ego being gratified because I did something good. It comes from a place of self, serving self. The example that I always give about this is that if I trip and I fall and I injure my right leg, my left leg will pick up some extra weight. We call that limping. But no one had to fold their hands and say, "Oh, gracious left leg, humanitarian left leg, wonderful Sevak left leg. Could you pick up some extra weight?" It automatically did it because it understands that the right leg is self. And it's never going to ask me, for how long do I have to keep picking up the right leg's weight? It'll just keep doing it. And if I injure my right leg week after week after week, the left leg will never say, "Again? Really? Me? Again? I have to again pick up the extra weight? Enough. I did it last week." It'll never ask that. It'll never say that. Because it understands the right leg is self. And that is the way It is the way that my Guru serves. He serves as he breathes. And it is the way that he is teaching us to serve. Not because we need to have Post-it notes on our computer that say, do a random act of kindness. Not because we have to have Post-it notes that remind us to be compassionate. Not because we're looking for a humanitarian award or for someone to say, oh, great job. But because through our meditation, through our sadhana, we've had an experience of the world being self. And when you serve like that, there isn't a break between the spiritual practice and the service. Every minute of every day becomes sadhana. We will be back next week with another show on inspiration and transformation. If you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover, send them to me at Sadhviji, SADHVIJI, at OMTimes.com. Have a beautiful, beautiful